Welcome back. I'm Katie Ross, the Director of Programming at EYEJ, Empowering Youth Exploring Justice. I directly oversee YODJ, Youth Online Discussing Justice. YODJ is a trauma-informed, copywritten, customized curriculum in which we discuss social justice topics in a safe and intimate space with our students. The program itself focuses on driving social justice reform by building on social emotional learning, creating a safe space, and together with our students, creating systemic solutions. I'm excited to speak with you guys specifically about strategies that you can implement into your trauma-informed social emotional space. We just had a reflection activity in which I asked you all to think about the trauma-informed framework and what are some principles that you would like to be more intentional about with your students in your classroom. Now I'm going to speak more deeply about YODJ and how we utilize certain strategies that you can potentially take outside of this space to implement into your learning space. As mentioned, YODJ is the first step. It's the foundational program of EYEJ in the pathway in empowering young people to become change makers. The next step being our youth council, which is actively engaging in social justice reform and is currently focusing on the digital divide. So YODJ, it connects students in 6th through 12th grade with the necessary resources for day-to-day life social emotional needs. We focus on very relevant topics such as anxiety, mental health, and healing issues desperately needed. We've served over 1,600 youth in 27 different schools and 5 rec centers across Cleveland and Ohio. So YODJ, it's trauma-informed. It's a very copywritten, customized curriculum. I'll speak more in detail about what that actually looks like when we talk about strategies. It creates a judgment-free setting for intimate discussions on topics surrounding social justice. We talk about things such as toxic stress, civil rights, police-youth relationships, and much more. It was created by educational professionals. It's been evaluated by worldwide evaluators to show the impact that it has on our youth. Like I said, it focuses on social emotional development. It's for 6th through 12th graders. And we really work to create self-advocacy and self-value leaders to create change. And we do that through our photography reflection project. So let's talk more about strategies to implementing trauma-informed SEL into remote learning. So at YODJ, Youth Online Discussing Justice, how do we create safety? And we talked about this meaning both emotionally and physically. One thing we do in YODJ is we create a weather check-in. This allows students to tell you how their weather's doing. Has their day been stormy, sunny? Was it showers in the morning and it's getting more sunny? And so this allows for a quick check-in to see where your students are at in that moment, while not being too invasive and asking them to share too much about how their day is going and adversities they may face. Additionally, and you're encouraged to also participate in that YODJ in your check-in that you create in your space. We also have group rules, and what's important in this is that we created our group rules with our students. This emphasizes shared power, mutual respect, and therefore creates safety. You want to establish predictability and transparency. So how can you make sure there are no surprises? You're being very clear with your youth, whether that is in the directions you give or how you give those directions. In a remote space, we are now losing opportunities for kinesthetic learners who are more doers and hands-on. And so you want to find ways to communicate in a variety of different platforms so that your youth can learn from a variety of different ways. We break up our students by gender identity and age. We do this for a few reasons. One, we focus on creating safety by sharing commonalities between each other. So we break up our students who identify as female, as well as our male students, and by age. And when we do this, we also create breakout rooms in which we have volunteers come in and lead these discussions. And we break out those volunteers to go into the rooms in which they have the same gender identity as the students. A large thing in creating safety is consistency, making sure that you're following through in your promises, and finally, building on your own social emotional learning. When we talk about YODJ, Youth Online Discussing Justice, and trustworthiness and transparency, a huge part about remote learning is we no longer have that transition into the physical learning space of your classroom. And so you want to create a way that you're embodying a transition for your youth, although they're not physically coming into your room. This allows for there to, one, be a trustworthiness. You're creating a physical space even though it's not there, and you're being transparent with your expectations when they come into your space. For example, you could create a virtual greeting process at YODJ. We love putting on a song, and we give the students 3 to 5 minutes to all join the Zoom in which the music is playing. This allows for them, if they are in that moment at facing adversity or in a very toxic environment, that we are providing an opportunity for them to regulate their body and to physically and emotionally come into the space that you are working with your students. Furthermore, you want to provide opportunities for collaboration. Trustworthiness comes from collaboration. So whether that's role playing or scenarios or students sharing their own stories, how can you incorporate collaboration into your content? We also always do a mindfulness activity. This comes back to self-regulation. It comes back to letting the brain, if it's in the flip of the switch when you enter the classroom, how can you bring the brain back to a safe, calm space? And finally, as I noted earlier, breaking up the students by gender identity and age. This allows opportunities to share narratives that, although they may have different identities, so in the group of girls, you may have girls that are from different socioeconomic status, from our different races, they are still having a commonality in their gender and their age. And that already provides an opportunity to build trust. And same exactly with the boys group. YODJ, Youth Online Discussing Justice, and peer support. So peer support is between students as well as between students and you as an educator. You want to get to know your students beyond being students. How can you incorporate icebreakers? We love doing a fun icebreaker every time we're in the same space. And we ask different questions, from what's your favorite snack to what do you like to do during a snow day? So that really is bringing more authenticity and transparency. Our volunteers that come into this space and lead the discussion with our youth are encouraged and required to also participate in the mindfulness activity, the get to know your students. And then we do a lot of role playing. We want to create a safe space to share narratives. Students want to be felt that they are heard, that they are seen, and want to hear from other students who have similar experiences. And that means, as you as an educator, that you can also share your stories, your wins, your things that you've learned from being a student yourself at one point, and how can you utilize that sharing and that storytelling to create mutual exchange and mutual respect. Continuing, YODJ, Youth Online Discussing Justice and Collaboration, educators really need to view students as experts in their own life. This comes from creating opportunities of shared power between students and educators so that the relationship can create healing and offers a true alliance in healing. And so how can you incorporate narrative storytelling, creating space for students to share how they're feeling in that moment into your everyday content and activities. We bring in a very diverse group of volunteers. The idea is to bring different stories from different identities and different lenses and let youth recognize where is their viewpoint, how can they create and become self-value leaders in the mix of all of these different perceptions and these different perspectives on social justice issues. So making sure that you're being diverse, not just with your whoever you bring into your space, but with your content, with your storytelling, with the exercises that you are providing for your students. And then collaboration must come from all directions. And so this is where, as mentioned earlier, different perspectives is huge. So YODJ, Youth Online Discussing Justice and Empowerment, Voice and Choice. So we focus on allowing for expression and determination. We emphasize that youth have the answer. We want to help them create goals with them. We are not necessarily the ones who know what's best for them. We want to help empower their self-efficacy, but we don't want to say this is where you have to get by whenever. We want to allow them to create their own goals, and this will help them stay accountable and empower their own voice and their own choice. And ownership in what they're doing. This comes down to confidence and self-love. And so when your students come to your learning space and they don't have their Zoom on or their cameras off, you want to be trauma informed and understand they may not like the environment they're in. They may not be proud of what's going on, but how can you create a judgment-free space that we don't care what's going on in your background. We don't care if you are still laying in bed or if you're in your pajamas or you haven't put on real clothes. Like, show up for yourself. Show up because you matter and you deserve to. And so how can you create a space of confidence and self-love? And part of that is being an example of it, but it's also encouraging your students to be vulnerable. And then shared power, as I've mentioned before, is huge. And so providing opportunities of choice, whether that's between two different activities, if that's between how you're going to get the homework done or how you're going to credit for attendance, and then building opportunities for voice. So can students share their own experience? Can students bring their narratives and what they're facing in their community? Perhaps in one of our YODJ sessions on the topic of exploring violence, a student shared his experience down at the basketball court when he was playing, and a fight broke out. And so we were able to utilize that example to break down and create a solution together. And then finally, reminding students that they have the answers. And that means not just encouraging that they have the answers, but us as educators listening. At times, we feel like we always know what's best. And sometimes our students and our youth are screaming and yelling and telling us what they need, but we're just refusing to listen. And finally, YODJ and cultural, historical, and gender issues. So this is understanding the intersectionality of our identities. If you're not familiar with a social identity wheel, you can Google it. It shows how every person comes from several different identities. It's not just our race and our gender and our age, our social economic status. It's our religion, it's our gender identity, it's our sexual orientation, and so on. And so how do those identities all work together, and how that plays a role in discrimination, privilege, and human rights? And with that, creating a safe space with your students while still respecting their privacy. And finally, part of validating the identities and validating that we're all different is speaking about those differences, creating a space where we can talk about culture, historical, and gender issues, especially if something's going on in the current state of the world, that a certain identity, a certain student is being more impacted by because of their identity. For example, our female students feeling impacted by the emphasis on the wage gap going on right now, and my high school seniors at one of my schools saying, is this a reality I'm going to have to face when I go into the workforce? How can we talk about that and create a space that we can all share our perspectives and then collectively come to a solution? So I hope you're able to take some strategies that you can implement into your remote learning that encourages social emotional learning, is trauma informed, and empowers your youth to create change. If you have any questions, you can contact me. I'm Katie Ross. My email's right there, katie@EYEJ.org for more information. And thank you and have a great day.